Welcome parents, guardians. We'll go ahead and get started. I know everyone's excited to hear how they can support their third, fourth, or fifth grader at home with their reading and writing. So we're going to start with the end in mind. We'll talk about first what the students can expect to see on the FSA at the end of the year. And then we'll look at some resources and support avenues you'll be able to use from home. So at this moment in time, this is the FSA calendar for Florida. I say that because in the middle of a pandemic, anything could happen. But at this moment in time, this is the schedule that we're looking at. We can expect in April for our third graders to take their reading portion of that assessment. And then our fourth and fifth graders will be taking the writing portion of that assessment. Then in May, we move on to third grade, taking the math portion of FSA, and that finishes them out. And then fourth and fifth grade will take the reading portion. At that point, third and fourth will be finished with FSA, but our fifth graders move on to take a science FSA as well. So here's an example of a text our students could expect to see on the reading portion of the FSA. There's a table there to let you know the range of words that could appear in a passage on the FSA. You can see there's quite a range. That's because it does include everything from a short poem to a longer excerpt of text. In addition to the number of words, of course, we do consider the reading difficulty of the text or the Lexile level, and I'll explain that a little bit more in just a minute. But the test itself would have a range of these passages. They're not all going to have 700 words. They're not all going to have 100 words. It will be a mix so that students would have ample time to read the text as well as respond to the questions. Now, the Lexile measure that I mentioned before is a tool for teachers, parents, and students, and it serves two unique functions. It is both the measure of how difficult a text is and also the student's reading ability level. So I could say that as a student, I read at a 740 Lexile, or if I'm in the library looking for a book, I could also say I'm looking for a book on the 700 to 800 Lexile range. So it works both ways. Now, your students should be familiar with their Lexile level. They work within Freckle and Achieve 3000, which both provide them with their Lexile level. If not, you can check with their teacher and they should be able to help you with that information. Now, there are two components of the writing test for fourth and fifth graders only. And we are talking about the ELA, or the English Language Arts portion of FSA. So fourth and fifth graders will take a writing assessment, and that will be given separately and before the reading test. They are graded by hand, so they take that assessment earlier to give ample opportunity for the grading of the essays. Third, fourth, and fifth will take their reading component of the FSA. Now, the writing components are not open-ended, and by that I mean students would not be given a prompt to say, write about your last vacation. Students would have varying experiences, and it wouldn't be a level playing field for all of our children. So this is a response essay, and students will be given a set of passages on a common topic and then respond to the information that they read about. We don't know in advance when the FSA writing component is given if it will be an informational prompt or an opinion-based prompt. Now, for reading, you can see that we have a little bit more than just multiple choice. These days, our students are expected to really synthesize information that they read and apply what they've learned. So we will take a quick look at each item type before we move on to our resources. Okay, now the writing component, as I mentioned earlier, is administered as a separate assessment. However, when our scores come in, they are reported as part of the ELA score. The essays are graded using a 10-point rubric, excuse me, but the essay is not just worth 10 points. There's quite a complicated formula to that because it is a raw score. And in order for a raw score to have meaning, it has to be converted into another type of score to allow for a uniform comparison. Usually we have parents ask about their child's handwriting, so I do want to assure you that if your child's handwriting is an issue, the teacher will let you know. But typically, the people who are grading these essays for the state are very well versed at making sense of students' handwriting. If there is no attempt to respond to the writing portion of the test, the reading portion of the test will not be graded. So I want to clarify that. If, let's say, a student was not feeling confident and they just withdrew, shut down, and did not write anything for their writing FSA, they could take the reading test, but that reading test would not be scored. Remember, the reading and writing scores are reported together, so in order to provide a score, both components, the reading and the writing, must be present. So we really work hard to encourage our students to take risks with their writing and practice what they know and to put down what they can. Now, this is just a brief overview of the writing components so that we can move on to the resources. As we get closer to FSA test dates, additional parent academies will be available to cover those topics in greater depth, and we can explore the rubric and some of the more intricate ins and outs of the test itself. So here's the format that should look pretty familiar to everyone. This is the kind of test question I would have seen when I was going to school, is the multiple choice. And if you can take a look at the question stem itself, what is the relationship between paragraphs? So there are not very many of what we would call lower level questions. So we would not expect to see our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders asked about what a character was wearing, or anything simplistic. They are usually analyzing text to respond. And of course, with this being multiple choice, there would be only one correct answer. Multi-select, and notice we no longer have just 4 answer choices here, we have 5, and you can have more than that. There's a little difference here between reading and math. In reading, the question itself will tell you exactly how many correct answers you must have to receive credit. With a multi-select item type, this is an all or none grading situation. Students must get all of the correct answers to receive any credit. For example, for this question, if I got one answer right and one answer wrong, there would be no credit given for this question. This item type, the multi-select, again, but in a little bit different format. And you can see here our answer choices are spread throughout the paragraph, and they've just embedded this in the actual text instead of listing the choices horizontally. And this item type is a table match. These, of course, you can tell are a little bit more involved. And a trick to remember in this, we try to get the students to realize as if you think about these as parking spaces in a parking lot, only one car can be parked in each row of this parking lot. I think a lot of times our students know the correct answer, but in this grid format, it can get a little confusing. We do practice with this format throughout the year. Even within our first unit of study, students are exposed to this item type. This question type is a multi-part or an EBSR. The EB stands for evidence-based. So for these question types, we're training our students to realize that the part B is almost always the proof or the evidence for Part A. So a good strategy to use with questions like this is if I think I've found the correct answer to Part A, but then when I look for the evidence in Part B, if I can't find it, then I want to go back and revisit Part A and probably change my answer. This item type is called a multimedia. Multimedia can include photographs, charts, images, graphics, and they can appear within the question itself or as a part of the passage. So the last item type our students would be exposed to is called an editing task, and there are two different kinds. This first one would be embedded within a story, and students would be expected to find the mistake or determine if it is a mistake and then select the correct answer. And the second instance is just would give you a direction based on a grammar rule and ask you choose the correct punctuation or choose the correct capitalization. One thing to remember here, though, is that this is based on grade level standards. So that means if a third grader is taking the test, they are not going to be asked about the proper use of a semicolon. That is not a grade level standard for our third graders. So if you're wondering how much does my child have to know or master to be successful with this, refer back to those state standards and specific to the child's grade level. So this is a little interesting table about the depth of knowledge of the questions that appear on the FSA. Now, the depth of knowledge for an individual standard represents that typical brain performance or cognitive complexity that a learning activity might need. In other words, these levels represent the amount of brain activity needed to successfully accomplish the task. So in grades 3 through 10, that low level, level 1, you can see is less than 20% or 20% or less of the test questions. The bulk of our items will come from level 2, and then level 3, you can see again falls within that 20 or below. So depth of 1 would just be, I can find it right there in the text, whatever the question's asking me. I don't have to make any big connections within the text itself. Level 2 is more of application. I'm using concepts and cognitive skills to respond to the questions. Then level 3 would be that full synthesis of what I'm reading or an analysis of knowledge. So that is where the writing component of the FSA falls. That is considered level 3. The other item types we previewed fall in the level 1 and level 2 range. So again, as we get closer to testing season, there'll be additional family academies offered, and our parent academies offered, but we just want to go over what the students are working toward and what their goal is for the end of the year. So if you're still curious or have some questions that don't get answered tonight, this is a great resource, the state website, and we should have time to visit that today before we leave. It has been completely revamped, so if you've had a student preparing for FSA and used this resource before, it looks much, much different. So I'll take a couple minutes here towards the end to walk you through that website. It is still being revised. So why support the reading and writing at home anyway? Do you ever wonder why so many teachers assign students reading as homework? And a lot of them seem to like that 20-minute time limit. That's based on a big body of research by Nagy and Herman. And this is a lovely illustration that really lays it out for us. Let's start with the student C. Student C doesn't like to read and is only going to commit to 1 minute a day outside of class. That's 180 minutes in a school year and only about 8,000 words. And if we're looking at state standardized testings, these students typically score in the 10th percentile. Student B reads 5 minutes each day, 900 minutes a year, 282,000 words, and puts them usually in about the 50th percentile on state standardized testing. Student A, that does that reading homework every night, 20 minutes, 3,600 minutes in a school year, and very nearly 2 million words. These students typically score within the 90th percentile in state standardized testing. So the bottom line is, when we want to get better at something, the way to do that is practice. If I want to get better at ice skating, I've got to go put on skates and get on the ice. If I want to be a better reader, I've got to read more. Just the process of reading and being exposed to unfamiliar vocabulary can add up to 90% of our new vocabulary. You don't even have to explicitly study. Your mind makes sense of it as you read. And as you're reading that book about baseball, once you've read several times what some of the baseball terms mean, they're in your head now and a part of your working memory. So there's a quote on the screen now by Daniel Willingham, who was a panel member for NAEP. Whether or not readers understand a text depends far more on how much background knowledge and vocabulary they have relating to the topic than on how much they practice comprehension skills. Now, if I have any students online tonight, don't get too excited. That doesn't mean we want to toss the comprehension skills out. It all works together to develop us as readers. So I want to practice the comprehension skills I'm learning at school, but also know that reading, and I'll explain what I mean by this, reading widely really does help your comprehension. If I'm going to read a story about pyramids and be tested on it, then it helps if I have some background knowledge on Egypt and pyramids and everything that would be covered in that would already be a part of my vocabulary. So how can we encourage our students to engage in wide reading outside of school? We got to make it fun. An essential step in learning to read is hearing good books read aloud. Parents who read aloud to their children are teaching literacy concepts simply by sharing books. Encourage your children to listen, ponder, make comments, ask questions. I know it's hard to believe that a teacher would say this, but it's okay to abandon a book. Be flexible enough to quickly abandon a book that does not appeal after a reasonable try. No one's meant to enjoy every book, and no one, especially a child, should be forced to read or listen to books that they find boring. Picture books are great at any age. Children never outgrow picture books. And you'll find that there are picture books available on multiple Lexile levels, all the way up to high school range. Hearing a good story read well, even if it's a little beyond a child's own reading capabilities, is a great way to encourage independent reading. So you have a choice here. Not all books make a great picture book read aloud. Some are best enjoyed silently. Children need the thrill of imagining, of being for a time in some character's shoes for a spine-tingling adventure. They want to experience the delight and amazement that comes with hearing playful language. For children, reading must be equated with enjoying, imagining, wondering, and reacting with feeling. If not, then we shouldn't be surprised if they're not really eager to read. So having your child or letting your child have some choice over the story or book that you read together can be very important. They need stories and poems that reflect what they themselves have felt. Okay? And I bring that up because times change. This is a generation who has always had the internet. They've always had that higher level of technology. So maybe when I was growing up, Little House on the Prairie was the hot read of the day. And while I'm sure it's still popular in some circles, we have moved on a bit and we have a lot more diversity in our choices. And we have Captain Underpants and Goosebumps and something for everyone. So that can be a little bit overwhelming as a parent. There are thousands of new children's books published each year in the United States. So whether you have an adventurous student, one who's really into the ghost stories, goosebumps, whatever it is, what can we do to help narrow it down? Or for a child who just doesn't know where to begin, where can I find some suggestions on what to read? Goodreads is a website, or excuse me, a social network for bookworms because instead of relying on media reviews and bestseller lists, recommendations and reviews are posted by readers, and that does include the children. So if I'm looking for a good read, visiting that website, I can see what other kids like me have chosen and enjoyed. Another great place for book suggestions is the American Library Association. They have a multitude of book lists by every possible imaginable category. The titles included in each of their lists are selected by committees and juries made up of American Library Association members, and their book lists are updated annually and cover everything from the very young through adults. So you notice I have two links here. The first one where it says children would probably be a little closer to that third grade interest reading level, and YA for the young adult or teens, more towards our mature reader for topics as well as readability. Now, this website is currently under redesign, and I'm horribly disappointed about that, but I am including it for anyone who is the parent of a young man who does not enjoy reading. Guys Read was founded by John Sheska, a very funny children's writer. And his mission, once he found out about the research behind that our boys tend to have less interest in reading, so he developed this program to help boys become more motivated readers and lifelong readers. And he includes things like comic books and encouraging adult men to serve as literacy role models. So he's pretty much taken everything down, but I would encourage you to come back and revisit this in a month or so to see what he's done to update that site. And yes, for the students who are listening, comic books, graphic novels, all of that are considered reading because you are reading the words on the page and making sense of what you are reading. Then we have what we call real life reading. These opportunities come up frequently. While you're cooking, show your child a recipe and go over it together. Ask your child to read the recipe to you as you work and explain why each step must be done in a special order. That is actually one of our state reading standards, and your child may not even realize you're practicing a reading standard with them while you're doing the activity. Encourage your child to write down other recipes from cookbooks and websites that they'd like to help make. If you're grocery shopping, let your child read the ingredients needed in a recipe. Create the shopping list together, and we'll even give a shout out to the math department. You can bring in some math skills when you have to determine which size product to buy. And when you're eating out, instead of reading the menu for your child, consider having them read the menu themselves and order for themselves. Supporting the writing skills at home, keeping a journal makes that a little bit easier to do. You can build excitement with choice, even down to decorating the journal to make it more personal and really give a sense of ownership. Writing down daily events and then recording his or her thoughts about them. You can help kickstart the activity by identifying topics to write about. Have that first brainstorm session and just fill up the page with different things that you can write about, because eventually, even the best of authors get stuck and need a reminder about what they have that they could go back and write about. Consider keeping a journal too, and then you can compare notes at the end of the week. And of course, we want to read aloud whenever it's time to share those journals. Help from Hollywood. Yes, we are going to take advantage of that. Again, this generation is used to a lot of entertainment and technology based entertainment, so let's capitalize on that. Work within your child's interests and use their favorite shows and movies. You could have your child choose a character from a favorite TV show or movie and then write a story using that character. What's better than being a TV or movie critic? What a dream job that would be. So watch a show together and then write a review that explains your opinion. And your child does the same, and then compare your reviews. Did you agree? Why or why not? Parents, you can also look for a movie based on a book that your child is reading or has recently read. Hold a movie night and then compare and contrast the two versions of the story. Sometimes, when they turn a great book into a movie, they make some drastic changes to the character or plot. Discuss which version you each felt was better, and if you support that opinion with evidence, you've just covered another reading standard. So, resources and support. I do want to take a second to pop over to the real internet to show you this, but I want to walk you through this briefly here. Technology sometimes works great and sometimes doesn't, so I want to make sure that I let you know where to find this in case I have any difficulties. The easiest way to get to the new revamped Florida State Assessments website is fsassessments.org. And just remember here, it's FS Assessments and not FSA Assessments. fsassessments.org/families.html. If you just go to the .org, it can be a little overwhelming. They have a lot of resources there, and it's more difficult to narrow down to the ones for families. Okay, let's see if we can get this. Here we are. So here's our website, and they are still working, and you'll see this throughout where it says coming soon. Preparing your student, and you would think, okay, I should be able to click here to see these practice tests, but notice the little bicycle path. That's an indication that is an online or computer-based practice test. Right now, we do not have any of our elementary students that will be taking the test electronically. So if you'll come down here to Associated Resources and all the way to the right, paper-based practice tests. That's where we'll find the resources that you would probably be more interested in using. And never fret, the answer keys are also provided. I do expect them to continue to add to this. And I do want to let you know as well, it's not critical that you have your student or your child practice these FSA tests at home. Most teachers, as we get close to the test, are going to do that anyway. So that leaves you open to have the more fun, engaging reading activities with your child. But I know this is usually a question on back of everyone's mind, so I wanted to let you know for sure where that resource is located. Now I'm going to pop back over to the PowerPoint for just a second. We have a couple of resources here that your students should be very familiar with. These are the ones they see multiple times a week in their class. We have Freckle and Achieve 3000. Again, if you've had students in Duval County Public Schools for a while, you may be asking what happened to iReady. So iReady will be living in the K1 and 2 world right now, and Freckle and Achieve 3000 are our virtual platforms for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. They are similar yet different. They are similar in the fact that you can read fiction and nonfiction text on both platforms. They're a little different because Achieve 3000 does give a lot of practice with answering questions. And Freckle can provide additional support. If you miss a question about main idea a couple of times, a Freckle will pop up a reminder about how you find the main idea. So it's a little bit more supported, but both have hundreds and hundreds of texts for students to choose from. So a couple of resources that are outside of Duval County Public Schools, but I wanted you to be aware of them. So we'll read through this briefly, and then I'll hop back over to the internet to show you where these are, what it looks like. Khan Academy, that has been on our Duval County Public Schools webpage for a number of years. Wide Open School is fairly recent. They organized themselves during the pandemic to provide free resources for families. Jacksonville Public Library, you don't have to fill out an application for a library card, and you don't have to worry about late fees. Your child can use their student ID number from the Duval County Public School. And I am very positive about that because my stepdaughter is tardy with her library books quite a bit. No late fees. Now, a nice resource here from an organization called Reading Rockets is Reciprocal Teaching Bookmarks. Okay, and I'm going to leave this on screen for a bit, so if anybody wants to take a screenshot or grab a picture with your cell phone, there are two images here to the side, and we will look at these online as well. They're folded in half, or you fold them in half to use them as a bookmark, and they have questions that can be used with any book. And it also includes reminders about getting clarification and making predictions, all the things that good readers do. So for that nice reminder and the fact that you can print them off, so if they lose the bookmark, it's not a big deal. You print another one. And the term reciprocal teaching means that the student then becomes the teacher in the way that they're asking questions. Okay, so let me pop back out here to the internet. And let's take a look at Khan Academy. Now, I already have an account with Khan Academy, so I do apologize. It will look a little different for you when you go here for the first time, but it's fairly easy to navigate. When you click courses, then you can choose reading and language arts, in which grade, and then you'll have access to some different activities and text. Drama and fiction, informational text, applying vocabulary knowledge, and these can be accompanied by an instructional video. So Wide Open School, let me check them next. And anything that I'm sharing with you today during this Parent Academy session, as of today, was verified as being free. But do keep in mind, these vendors are outside of Duval County Public Schools, and they can change the way they decide to present their information at any time. But as of today, everything was still free. So Wide Open Schools, again, was set up during the pandemic to provide parents with resources they could use when the schools were closed. And so they've kept the site going. And then again, it is very easy to use. You scroll down to find the subject area you want, let's say reading and writing. And then you can see the grade that I'm always visiting, 3rd through 5th. As you scroll down, you have the opportunity to filter if you're looking for something in particular, an article or a book, a video, a lesson, but you can just scroll to get an idea of what they have to offer. Their vendors that partnered with Wide Open School are some names that you've probably heard of. We have PBS, Time for Kids, TED Talks, National Geographic, and they have some wonderful recordings with some people from the Hollywood community as well. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more to show you again. Here we have Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and this is read by Scarlett Johansson, and it is the complete book. It is the complete audio book provided by Audible. And this load more. I'm going to give another second here because it just gets more and more diverse. So we have Time for Kids, poets.org, National Geographic, and I'm going to continue to scroll down because in addition to the variety, you can see we have lots of informational text, the animals. We also have lots of literary text. There are a lot of social studies and science passages here as well. But then these where you have an opportunity here to hear the author read her own book. And she is very well known. Your children probably recognize her. Her books are in almost every classroom. And then this one is a video of James Earl Jones reading a book about a drum. And what a beautiful voice that would be for a book, to narrate a book. So again, I'm not going to go all the way because you can just hit load more, and they just keep coming. Okay, so I'm going to click here on the reciprocal teaching bookmarks. Again, this is the same address that was provided on the slide. So if you already took a picture or a screenshot of that, you'll have that information. And just wanted to scroll down to give you a better view of what's on there. You make a prediction when. Now, as an adult reader, you're thinking, okay, come on. Everybody knows when to make a prediction. When you're learning to read, not necessarily so. So these are a really nice reminder. And this is a good reminder too for our students who are really eager readers, that forces them to slow down a little bit and then make that prediction. And so you can see how the questions are open-ended and could be used for any book. Okay, let me hop back over to our PowerPoint here. Oh, and I did forget Epic. So let me come back to Epic. GetEpic.com. A lot of teachers used this when we were home for virtual schooling last year. So you might recognize the imagery here. They have thousands and thousands of books from over 250 different publishers. And here's the number I was looking for, over 40,000 books. And those are the popular high quality books. I think you've seen some of the images going by. So these are books that are on bookstore shelves. So unlike some of our other resources like Achieve 3000 where they write their own text, these are the books that you would find on the shelf in a bookstore. So this would give students access to a form of ebooks at any time. They also have an app that can be purchased through the App Store, and I believe they also use Google Play. I do want to let you know that when you do click to look at this as a parent, let me come back and show you, you'll get a message that educators are free, but then when you click for parents, you also get the message that Epic is free. So there should not be a problem there, but again, we never know how long this will last with an outside vendor, but I just want to let you know so we can take advantage of it if that's a convenient option for anyone. So let's take a look at some factors to consider in selecting text. We looked at some ways to narrow down choices or get book recommendations, some activities to do. Now we're ready to select. Yes, we want it to be fun, engaging, and interesting. Yes, I do want to consider what my child can read. I don't want them to become overly frustrated, but let's not let that reading level be the primary consideration. It can, again, not only frustrate a child, but also many adult books are written on a 3rd, 4th, 5th grade level. So as an example, Grapes of Wrath believe I was a senior in high school when I read that, is written on a third grade Lexile level. And I'm sure some of you remember the horror film Silence of the Lambs. The book is also third grade level. So you want to use um, good old-fashioned parenting common sense to make sure you're picking the right book for your child. It's impossible to read every book, again, that's been published or is available, but just don't let that Lexile level be your only driving point. A good general guide is the 5-finger rule. You have your child turn to any page in a book and just start reading. Ask them to hold up a finger every time they get to an unfamiliar word on the page. If they can hold up 5 fingers before they finish the page, that's probably not a good choice for them to read independently. Maybe one if you wanted to read with them, but that might be a little too much struggle for them to read independently. So, Lexile Levels. Duval County Public Schools is currently using the College and Career Readiness Lexile Levels. And I wanted to make that clear because if you look up Lexile Levels, you'll see many different references to grade levels. What's on the screen right now may not match 5 different Google searches you would do for Lexile Levels. So the specific one that we use in Duval County is the College and Career Readiness. This is a table that is housed in Achieve 3000, so your students do have access to this at any time. Now, before I send anyone into a panic, these are end of the year expectations. We're in September, okay? So if that Lexile level is not where you, excuse me, not within this meets column, understand this is where we'd like students to be at the end of that academic year, okay? So, of course, exceeds is great, and approaches, and you'll notice they overlap a bit. Here we have that 155 in second grade to 415. That's also encapsulated here in this first grade band of Lexile scores. So there's a little bit of overlap. It's not that if I'm 740, I'm definitely fourth grade level. That's also third grade as well. So it's a nice stretch across grade levels there. Achieve 3000 does recalculate our students' Lexile level every month, but I do want to let you know that activities that are completed outside of the school day do not impact that Lexile score. For obvious reasons, of course, we cannot ensure who is doing the work outside of the school. But any activity on Achieve 3000 outside of the school day does still count towards the students' percentages. The questions that they respond to after reading a text, that still counts, but it would not be considered when they recalculate that Lexile level. So, what to remember? First of all, participating in parent academies is a great way to stay involved and connected, but also reach out to your child's teacher and school. Take advantage of all the resources, including the ones online. Read a variety of literary and informational texts with your child. Remember that wide reading, song lyrics, poetry, joke books. So it doesn't all have to be a chapter book. So really cover it all. So I'm wrapping up. Please know that we are here to support you, not just the students, but the parents as well. So please reach out if you have questions.